Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do.
In this episode, I interview Zach Abramowitz, founder of Killer Whale Strategies, whose work advising law firms, legal departments, and legal tech companies since 2018 has made him one of the most trusted voices on where legal AI is actually heading.
Welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, your host, and I'm really thrilled today to have on a friend and a guest, Zach Abramowitz. He is the founder of Killer Whale Strategies, and he helps law firms, law departments, and legal tech companies take advantage of the market. He's been doing it since 2019, so he has been doing this for some time. He knows the lay of the land, the history, how things have changed. They have changed dramatically, and he is not only knowledgeable about this stuff, but when he talks at conferences and speaks, I mean, the guy has a lot of personality, and he's just fun to watch. And I've seen him at a number of conferences, including Richard Troman's Legal Innovators conferences. And I really, recommend that you see him and treat yourself. So with that, Zach, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Man, you've set me up now. I got to bring it.
Yep. And I know you will. So it's really low key, though, not a lot of pressure. Basically, this is just, an opportunity for the audience to get to know you better, for me to get to know you better. So we're just chilling with a cup of coffee and hanging out.
So those two Red Bulls I just pounded, maybe a bit overkill. All right.
Yeah. Mellow. Where are you right now?
So I am just outside of Tel Aviv. That's where my studio is. And people ask me where I live. I like to say, like George Clooney, up in the air, right? Like, seem to be flying to a different spot every couple of weeks. But most of my business is in the U.S. and the U.K. But I'm based here in Israel.
Nice. So you are a traveling man, and you make a lot of stops. You're also the host of Legally Disrupted, right? Is that your own podcast?
Yes, Zach Abramowitz is Legally Disrupted, and we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Yeah.
Very cool. By the way, out of curiosity, what was your last stop? What was your last talk that you gave?
So I was just in North Carolina to speak at the annual meeting of the North Carolina Bar Association. And I actually think that was a very interesting talk. I sometimes I like to use myself. I try to position myself in the industry where I kind of become a data point in my own right. And the one I use there is I have been speaking, like you said, to audiences around the world. But if I'm being honest, most of the audiences up until this year were innovators, entrepreneurs, founders, chief innovation officers, practice innovation folks inside of law firms, legal operations. Like, if it sounds like I'm mentioning every single person but the practicing like attorneys, like the actual ones who all of this technology that we talk so much about is targeted to, then that's really recent. And when the North Carolina Bar Association reached out to me to have me speak at their conference, for me, that was sort of like an end of Q2, like kind of data point that I'm going to overreact to. And I just, more than ever over the last 6 months, I have found myself, whether it's at partner retreats or at a talk like at the North Carolina Bar Association, speaking to more and more attorneys, practicing lawyers. And I think that is significant because I think it really signals a shift to where things have gone in the last year, which is this was obviously on the radar. Lawyers have been trying and experimenting with the technology for a couple of years, but now I think all of them realize this is not a phase. This is not going away, and it's no longer cool to be a holdout.
Here, here. Yeah, that is definitely the vibe. And if you look at the Gartner hype cycle, Yeah, we're out of like the early wave of just innovators and in crowd. I mean, North Carolina, like I actually do some business there too with Legal Aid of North Carolina. And interesting. Like they're very innovative in North Carolina, but at the same time, there's been a little bit of a pullback at the state level funding good stuff like this. So that is an interesting data point for sure. There's been a lot of change, obviously. Did you ever think it would happen this fast?
Well, to be fair, you mentioned before, I started Killer Whale Strategies in 2019. The truth is, I actually really started the business in 2018. I just decided in 2019, to formalize it, create an actual like company and start actually, building it as if it were more than just like a consulting gig here and there. I've been in this for a while, and already in 2018, I thought the technology was getting so good that law firms were just not going to be able to ignore it anymore. And so I was actually 4 years ahead. But when ChatGPT hit in December of 2022, I saw that and I thought to myself, like, okay, this is capable of doing everything that technology has not been able to do. And that because it wasn't able to do that, it was never ready for prime time with lawyers. And so when I saw ChatGPT, I was just completely blown away by the experience, by the fact that it could so clearly understand language, understand me, right? Ilya Sutskever has this line I love, which is the thing that surprised me most about the models, he says, is that when I speak to them, I feel understood, right? That was the experience I think a lot of us had early on. And I actually thought in many ways it would catch on quicker than it did over the last few years, because I was just so blown away by, again, not just like the technology and the experience, but very clearly seeing a tool that was now available to any lawyer or any startup for that matter, that was more powerful than the startups that I had seen investing millions of dollars, to build out their own proprietary version, their own technology, their own machine learning. And all of a sudden you had something that was available to everyone that was a order of magnitude better than anything that came before it. So actually, I kind of think if anything, I thought it would move faster than this, but it's not to say we've moved slow. I think legal has really adopted, but I thought it would be quicker.
Yeah, me too. Last 10 years trying to convince people about this, and it's kind of like everywhere all at once. But the thing is that even though like in the in crowd, it seems like everywhere all at once, everyone's using it, not necessarily so on the ground level with attorneys. Many of them had an experience with ChatGPT or Claude, but using it daily, many are, but not the vast majority, I would think at this point. Some of the statistics show that there's usage, but to actually be using it in everyday tasks, and it's kind of strange to me because you had to have such overwhelming abilities in AI for it to actually just filter into the consciousness of lawyers. Like it had to be so overwhelmingly powerful and good for it to even be considered, you know? And so for me, like it surprised me a little bit that it took as long because it had to just overwhelmingly overcome the hurdles that were kind of in place.
Yeah, and I think that what happened is in after summer of 2023, a lot of people came back from summer vacation and they had been with family members and someone had used AI for something on a vacation or a trip. And I think a lot of lawyers came back to the office and said, "All right, this is worth giving a shot." And I think they had seen the headlines, right? Because the headlines weren't just in like law.com and law 360 anymore. Like these were headlines in the Wall Street Journal, the Wall Street Post, the New York Post, excuse me, the New York Times. You were seeing all, MSNBC. the headlines were, oh, this is going to eliminate lawyers. This is going to be there's no reason to go to law school anymore. I mean, these were things we were hearing in early 2023. Sam Altman, when he was giving examples of what AI could do, like the first example out of his mouth was talking about replacing a junior associate, right? So I think that there was a lot of expectations. And then Bain did a survey that they released in 2024 that showed that there had been a huge delta. In fact, the biggest single delta between expectations and actual user experience. And lawyers had a delta of 18 percentage points, right? So like lawyers came in thinking, wow, this is going to be amazing. And then they used it, and for some reason, it didn't resonate with them. But what happened, I think, over the course of 2024 and then into 2025 is that from that first group that tried it, there were a couple that figured it out. And I think this is the key, is that it's not just about whether or not you use AI or not, right? Like I use a paintbrush and so does Da Vinci, right? That doesn't mean that we're painting the same thing. There's boring use of AI. There's kind of blah AI. There's bad AI use. It's not all the same. But I think that what happened was there was a small group figured it out. And that group kind of kept on sharing it with others. And eventually you'd be at the office on a weekend and you'd say to someone, oh yeah, I'm stuck here working on this brief. And someone would say to you, come on, man, like just use AI for that. Right. And I think that slowly but surely, folks gave it a second chance and then another chance. And then more and more and more people kind of saw, oh, John or Mary down the hall didn't like this technology either, but now they're on it. Maybe I should give it a second chance. And I think you see already by 2025, according to most industry surveys, the number of lawyers using AI at work goes from a minority to a very clear majority. And I think even today, you still don't, like, as much as you said before, there's a lot of lawyers who are using it, but how many lawyers are using it in a way that someone who really knows AI would go, okay, that's smart. That's a smart thing to do, versus how many lawyers are using it and you see, oh my gosh, that's what you're doing with it. You're like, that's cringe. And you're going to for sure get in trouble for submitting something with hallucinations.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, there's so much of it that is human psychology, and getting on board with something is not just the tech is great. It's a matter of like it actually fitting into how you work, how you think, having the mindset that accommodates it. There's all of that, and there's also more right now with everyone wanting in on this. Everyone wants a piece of legal. You've got everyone from Amazon to Google to Microsoft, everyone is trying to jump in.
But you mentioned psychology. I don't want to pick up on that because I think you're absolutely right. To me, I tell people all the time, like you can wait and drag your heels and then eventually learn how to use AI, pretty quickly in terms of like opening it up and figuring out how to attach documents and the buttons. But where early adoption has compounding interest is developing like your AI brain, your AI worldview. What a lawyer referred to me recently as getting AI pilled. And the story that I think really communicates that well is Winston Weinberg, the founder of Harvey, says that when they first built their product, they called it Counsel AI. And when they changed the name of the product to Harvey, they immediately saw that people began prompting better and working with the product better.
Yeah.
Same product, but a different name. And I think the key was, they were thinking about it like it was this other person who they could work with. And that psychological change, that reframe, I think can sometimes be extremely, extremely powerful. So I do think a lot of it is psychology.
Well, speaking of reframing, let's take a moment here. The audience knows that I'd love to get into people's origin story and background, and I'd love to get to know you better, Zach. So let me ask you a little bit about that. Right now, you're in Israel. Did you grow up there?
No, so I spent a ton of time here as a kid. I had a ton of family living here. My dad's two sisters lived here. My grandparents lived here. And I even studied for a few years after high school here. But I grew up actually in Houston, Texas. I spent 2 years living in San Francisco as a kid. And I often say that, like, between Houston, Israel, and San Francisco, that's like a pretty easy way to give someone like a real identity crisis. So I feel like, Houston and San Francisco just on their own are like two of the most different cities in the world. And I deeply appreciate both of them. Like San Francisco, when I remember moving there, I was just in like total culture shock, right? Like I had never forget like the ideologies of San Francisco, which were so different than Houston, just physically as a city. Like Houston is flat, spread out. There's not a lot of action, very conservative, very traditional, very like focused on school and athletics. And then, you come to San Francisco and, I all of a sudden, I was a kid and here I was like taking city buses all around, exploring the city, just seeing beautiful views all the time, interesting neighborhoods. And I think like, Houston really gave me my sort of like business identity. And I think San Francisco really like brought out my creativity in a way that it hadn't been before. And I to this day think, had I not like spent those 2 years in fifth and sixth grade living in San Francisco, like I wouldn't be where I am today. Hugely influential in my life. And that was, by the way, that's before it was a tech hub, right? That was when San Francisco was like this like little sleepy city of like, celebrities and people with a lot of money. And then a lot of, huge number of immigrants, very, very different city than like the tech hub that it is today. It's like hard for me. Like some parts of the city look exactly the same, but every time I'm downtown, I just see it's like pulsing. It's like new, Manhattan West. I'm always like shocked because I remember it when it was much sleepier, lazier place.
Yeah, still tech friendly at the time back then, but not at the level that it is right now. Like I
Yeah.
completely.
Oh, this is pre-internet. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's really an interesting point about how geography kind of like dictates culture in some ways and also influences our mindset. And it sounds like those 2 years in sixth grade in San Francisco kind of like opened your mind beyond kind of the Houston template that you had so far.
Oh, for sure.
I'm curious that like in Houston, just give us a taste of the neighborhood you were in. Like, was it kind of like a bedroom suburban area outside of Houston, or was it like in the city, or like what was it like?
Yeah. So, in Houston, very few people really live downtown. There are, like, it exists. Like there are people, but it's the minority. Like it is a very suburban place. Everything is bigger in Texas. Like the kind of like the standard house and plot, even in less wealthy neighborhoods are, huge. And so, everyone kind of lives more spread out. We lived in a neighborhood that was really close to my dad's business. So my dad was a very, very accomplished tennis player who actually went and coached the Columbia tennis team when he was in Columbia Business School and was able to get a not just free ride, but actually get paid to go to Columbia Business School because he was coaching. So his team, he played for Rice University in Houston. His team went to the national championship. We grew up. Martina Navratilova, his coach, was my dad's like best friend. Like we were really in the tennis world. And my dad's first business was the West Side Tennis Club. And now if you're listening and you're from Houston, I'm going to like flex for a minute, which he sold to Mattress Mac, who I know that name doesn't mean everything, like it means something
Great
to
name, though.
everybody. But for people in Houston, Mattress Mac is like one of the biggest like local celebrities. He's become famous in the last couple of years nationally because he would make these huge bets on like $1 million bets on the Astros to win the World Series. But my dad built this tennis club really from scratch into one of the biggest clubs in the country. And tennis didn't end up being like the hot business he thought it was going to be, which has got like sort of an interesting story behind it. But for us as kids, I tell my dad all the time, like, there was no better way to grow up. Like we're going to this club, for the first 6 or 7 years of my life. And then at some point, my parents explained to us like that we own this club. I was like, what do you mean we own it? What do you mean we own it? I'm like, well, you know how like mom works in the office of the club? Like, yeah, that's our business. We own the club. And I was like, I own this? Are you kidding me? I felt like, I tell my dad that was the easiest way to make me feel like growing up like a billionaire without, being anywhere close, to that in actual, in a monetary sense. But yeah, getting to grow up as like, king of the hill at the local tennis club was awesome. And I spent huge portions of my youth there, either like, playing basketball in the gym, hitting a tennis ball against a wall, playing in the tennis camps. And yeah, really, 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 really kind of cool, unique way to grow up.
That sounds like some great memories and also a fantastic early influence in your life that you could see something like that. Your father, your mother, like it sounds like it was family business, right?
Yeah. And the funny thing is like my dad, it ended up, from his perspective, like kind of being like a failed venture in the sense that it didn't make him rich. But what it did for us as kids, number one, was incredible. But it also was a huge platform for him to ultimately get into other things like real estate, which ended up, becoming, getting into commercial real estate as a significant business. And that was only able to happen because so many people wanted to be like in the club. They wanted to own a piece of the tennis club. And he would always tell them like, what are you doing? Why do you want to own any of this? Let's talk real estate. But people liked it. So it ended up being a very interesting platform, made him a ton of connections. And I think I used that, my first business, again, also like it wasn't failed in the sense that it didn't make me rich, but it did give me like a definite like platform, network, know-how to like go on to the next thing. And like that's what I've really tried to like teach my kids is that like start soon and fail even sooner, because when you're young, you have that capability. And if you view everything as like the kind of the platform to what comes next and what you'll do a week, a month, a year, 5 years from now, then it's like win-win. There is no true failing, because everything there should set you up for your next thing.
I love that, Zach. Amor fati, right? Like one thing leads to another, and I think too often we think success is a straight line, and we know from the little squiggly drawing that it goes in different places, and sometimes like there's a platform for your father in having this tennis club, which enabled the next step because of having met so many people.
Totally, yeah.
So I do want to still like linger a bit on the family. Like how big was your family? Do you have a lot of brothers and sisters? Like what was that like?
Yes, my wife is one of 12 kids, so that's like a really big family. I was one of three. I'm the middle child between two sisters. So I didn't grow up with brothers, but I did grow up with some very good friends.
That's great. So when you were growing up, like were you much into tech at the time? Were you playing video games? Were you coding at all? Like, what was your interest level at that time?
Not at all. I cannot emphasize this enough. Like, for me, tech was something that I thought about like much later in life. But if I had been as interested in tech as I am today, and I have to tell you, I'm not interested in all tech. I'm really interested in AI, right? But I'm not necessarily like, I did not grow up a techie. A lot of what I've had to do in tech has been learned because I didn't necessarily grow up with it. Now, that's not to say like, I loved playing like Civilization on the computer, and I liked playing, Sierra's Police Quest, and you could look at that at Police Quest and the Police Quest games as kind of like early prompting. But so it's not that I like totally uninterested. And, we had a Mac computer in the house and played Carmen Sandiego, but I was not the kind of person who spent a ton of time coding. I had friends who were like into like learning JavaScript back then and learning some basic computer languages. And some of them have gone on to be like extraordinarily like successful. I was like as basic boy as it gets. I really wanted to like the thing I wanted to do as a kid was play Major League Baseball. My grandfather, on my mom's side, had been drafted to play shortstop for the Detroit Tigers, and he ended up getting drafted by Uncle Sam to go to the South Pacific and fight in World War II. And so,
Wow.
major life dream was eliminated. But I always felt like it was in my blood. Like I thought like, hey, I could totally do this. And so most of my time as a kid was spent like playing sports, throwing balls against the wall. There was not a lot of thought about starting businesses or anything like it.
Well, what a great thing to have life and multi dimensions besides, just tech and business. But and by the way, like we've been talking about, that informs it, right?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, and by the way, I'm like that with my own kids. I've constantly told them, don't try to be specialists. Don't try to just be good at like one thing. Like I've got a son who's an extraordinary gymnast, and I constantly tell him like, play football too, play basketball too. Like the it be having that kind of balance between hobbies, between passions, I think is not only important in the sense that like it's good not to just be entirely leveraged on one thing. But I always feel like some of the best football players are also great soccer players, and some of the best, tennis players were also great baseball players. I think these different skills have a way of reinforcing and like harmonizing nicely.
yeah, I agree, especially in this age of AI. Like being able to see connections across things is extremely important and valuable. I do have a question for you about your steps in education. So you went on to Yeshiva University and you majored in
Yep.
religion. And so first off, just to stay a beat on that, major in religion like that, it's a a commitment to get a major. And so what was the
Yeah.
focus then on that?
So interestingly enough, I went to Yeshiva University. At Yeshiva University, I was doing a dual curriculum. So I was studying Talmud from around 7:30 in the morning till 3 p.m. in the afternoon. I then had a full slate of classes between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. My first 2 years, I used to go back and then study Talmud from around 8 till 12, right? And that's not even the religion major. That was entirely like secondary. But that's the reason. The reason I chose to study at Yeshiva University was because they have an unparalleled Talmud program, and I mentioned that. And I know people don't typically ask me about this, but since you did, I'll sort of dig in. Um, there is nothing that has been better for my analytical skills than the years that I spent learning Talmud, in particular in a kind of like conceptual analytical way. Um, in fact, I would say if you've ever sat in a talk with me, if you've ever sat through any of my sessions, you are hearing you're hearing my Talmudic background, even if you don't realize it. I consider it to be like one of like my secret weapons. I did also like major in religious philosophy. Now, the truth of it is, I have to say, like, I just found a teacher I really liked, one who also very much like opened up my mind to a variety of like, new ways of thinking. And I sort of just doubled down and took that professor, more or less majored in that professor. And very, very important, like part of my life. I think going back, I also tried, I tried my hand at like math and physics, and I was like never good at just like plain old computation. Like adding 4 and 10 together is the kind of thing that'll confuse me, right? But I really appreciated like the conceptual piece with like calculus and physics. So that was also super important to me. But when I was in university, like you don't go to Yeshiva University for the social life. Like you just don't, right? I think that like the rigor of study for those who choose to do the true dual course Talmud and full Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Sciences, whatever you're doing, that is so like intellectually challenging. I actually remember the first couple of months in law school feeling intellectually kind of dissatisfied because I thought what I had come from was so much more rigorous. Now, I didn't get straight A's in law school, so I very quickly found out that like maybe that was a me thing, right? But I did like it was I've never in my life worked and dedicated myself as hard as I did, especially the first 2 or even 3 years of university. Senior year, I was already like, performing nightly at stand-up comedy clubs. So it was like a different kind of hard work.
Yeah,
And probably also something that you hear if you come to any of my talks is you hear the Talmud, but I also think you probably hear like, the Comedy Cellar a bit as well.
And I hope we have time for me to ask you a little bit about that later. I ask a lot of people that have decided to go to law school, why? And for some of us, it may be that, whatever we majored in, like I had no choice. I wanted to make a living. I had to go to law school. For others, it might be that I felt like when I was a little baby that I was destined to go to law school, or people said, "Hey, you're a great arguer, so you're going to go to law school."
Yeah.
What was that like for you? Was it because of the experience?
Great question. So I wish I could go to law school again today. That's the truth.
Really?
If I would go to, if I were starting my career today, I would definitely think very, very seriously about a traditional legal career. And I would go to law school with a entirely different purpose than why I went to begin with. So let me start with why I went to begin with. I went to begin with primarily because I saw that as like a sort of community, society, parents approved like degree and path, right? You'll hear sometimes like Indian kids talking about like, what their parents expect, like either, doctor, engineer. For us, like law was like stamped with like all kinds of approval. My dad always felt that the fact that he didn't have a law degree really like was something he wished he had. I think kind of in the way that I feel like not coming from a technical background where I was, trained to write Python code is something that like I missed. Maybe like my, the last little piece of what would have made me like a true, like complete like tech entrepreneur. For my dad, it was not having a JD. And I think he had this image that he's going to like send this son off to, some Ivy League law school, and he's going to come back and I'm going to be like his pit bull. And anytime he's in like any kind of like business dealing, he's like, all right, you want me to let him off the leash? And so I think like that was part of it. I think he also felt, and I think it's true. Probably from his perspective, it was true. And maybe once upon a time it was true. But there was this idea that, law is like a very, flexible degree, and it offers a lot of career paths. That and by the way, and I also did really well in the LSATs and got into a good school. So those were the real reasons that I went. Right? It felt like it was like, okay, like I'm not necessarily like starting my career and going to get a job right now, but everyone approves of doing this. Like that stuff kind of meant a lot more to me then than it does today. Today, I'm fine sort of like going off the beaten track. If I were to go today, the reason I would go would be primarily because I would want to have a career in pro bono and representing people on cases that I truly believed in. And I would look at whatever business I did, whatever money I made, as the way to support my pro bono practice. that to me is like really like what it means to be like a legal professional, right? We don't use the word professional, for all jobs. I do believe that, law is a true profession. And I would have, I would have liked, I think the thing that that I missed most in my legal career was really, really meaningful pro bono work. And I advise everyone who's going to law school, if the reason that you're doing this, like if you really just love working on like big M&A deals on the legal side and you want to see like your name in the Wall Street Journal as one of the lawyers who worked on what, okay, then do it. If you just love to get into drag it out fights and you just like to crush other people, yeah, go work at Quinn Emanuel or one of like the big top litigation boutiques. Work at Sussman Godfrey. That's awesome. And if that gets your competitive juices flowing, love it. But if that's not the case and you're going to law school, then the reason should be you want to provide access to people in need whose cause you feel genuinely like supportive of. And you're going to support that through paid clients. That to me is like, that's the key. And I think that the people who've taken that approach to their legal career come out so much more satisfied than those who sort of view it in the flip. I think most lawyers tend to have like their job, like that's my real job. I'm like, oh, I got to do some pro bono stuff. Fine, like let me grab a matter here at like late October and see if I can get my hours in before the year.
While we have the time together, I need to ask you about the comedy. So what brought you to stand up? Like you did it for almost 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like just a fly by night thing. Like you dedicated yourself to it.
Like the heart is so much, right? Like when I tell you I was writing jokes 24 hours a day, like all times, never off, practicing it. So I was in the pre-YouTube, comedy world. So there's no evidence of me ever having gone on stage, right? And I think so. A lot of people will ask me like, "Well, did you bomb?" And I'm like, "No, I was actually like pretty good at it, and I was performing very often, like either right before or right after, like Jim Gaffigan and Judah Friedlander and really big, really big comedians." Who were, they were trying material that they were going to that they were working on for maybe for to go on the Tonight Show or to go on tour. So, New York, the New York comedy clubs is really like where a lot of comedians work out their material, fine tune it, iterate on it. But every single night I would go and like hang out at the club, wait for some comedian to cancel or flake, and then I would grab their spot. That's how I got started. Did a couple of bringer shows where but eventually like got good enough where they knew, okay, we can put him on. He's good enough for this. But I was going to open mics, trying out my material, and then taking the video back to the school library, putting the cassette in the TV, watching everything, seeing where people laughed, seeing like how I was able to really land the joke, and then iterating over and over and over.
So you
again.
did like a postmortem, like on a sports reel, and like figured it out.
Oh, completely. It was like being a quarterback and like watching film completely. And I will tell you, that's exactly how I do it still today. Like the way I do a lot of my talks is constantly iterating on them. So I will go to a conference and give a talk. I guarantee that's not the first time that I've given that talk, but I will always usually like open mic my stuff, figure out what's work, figure out what doesn't, take it to a smaller show, try it out there, see how it plays, change up the slides, change up the delivery, like that process, like the creative process that I use today is very much like exactly like what I was doing as a stand-up comic. Now, why I didn't continue with stand-up comedy, that's like a whole other like conversation. And the truth of it is, I don't really have a great answer. I will tell you this. When I interviewed at Cooley, I came into the hiring partner and he says to me, all right, I don't see this every day. You're a stand-up comedian. I want you to do the routine. And I said, all right, I'm ready, but you got to have 2 drinks. And I said, and you've got to be ready to laugh, because everyone who comes to a comedy club, they came there for a reason. They came there ready to laugh. They've lubricated themselves with the appropriate amounts of alcohol, and they're ready to go. So, I don't have a great answer for why I didn't. I keep on thinking one of these like legal weeks, when we're all in New York City for the show. I feel like maybe I'll go back to stand up New York or one of these spots and do a routine, just so people know that, like, yeah, I'm not like, when I say that, like, I was a stand up comedian, like, really, like, this was wasn't getting rich off of it. Like, it was like $20 for a spot and maybe like a free beer at the bar. Like, no one was getting rich off of it, but hey, I had I was a resident advisor at a college dorm. I was there on a full scholarship. So at the time it was like a perfect opportunity, and wouldn't give it up for anything.
I love it. And I love, again, how it like informs everything that you're doing right now.
Sure.
We as human beings are many layers. We're not just a straight line. And it's a wonderful thing that you took that, opportunity, and that you actually, devoted yourself to it, because I think a lot of people wouldn't be that courageous. They'd be scared of whatever, and so, a lot of times we need to work through that fearful mindset that we have,
Yeah.
because it limits us from what we do. But I would be remiss, especially right now, if I don't bring us back to the tech. And there's a lot to talk about. Like I had mentioned before we started going back, and I wish we had more time for the rest of your career, because it's been a lot of amazing experience, and very like innovative and cutting edge, and founding your own company and like all of that. But now things are coming together in a way that is, beyond what I ever expected. Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, and more jumping in. Like the only one missing, I was joking the other day, is like, let's say Disney or or I don't know, some other company. Everyone seems to be jumping in legal. Why do you think that is? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Where are we going?
Listen, everyone's getting excited about legal. Everyone's getting into it. I think it's a good thing. I think ultimately the legal application layer will be filled by startups who are entirely dedicated to it. I know that's like everyone's thinks, hey, everyone's just going to be using Claude. Claude will never be able to spend all of its time focusing on legal. What Anthropic needs to spend its time focusing on is being better than OpenAI, being better than Google, being better than Mistral, being better than open source, being better than whatever NVIDIA cooks up, being better than the next version. We're all working with the transformer model. What happens if a new model comes out that has, better latency, better efficiency, better capability? Well, this is what Anthropic should be the most concerned about. I think the reason that all of these models are like have people working on legal is, number one, legal is a big use case. According to some, it's the second most popular use case behind coding, or the second most impactful, But I think that ultimately what they really want to do, those models, is just waken people up to the idea that they should be using AI at work. So if you haven't heard of Harvey, or if you haven't heard of Legora, or if you haven't heard of Spellbook, or any of the other sort of like legal specific products out there, you hear it from us, Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google, and Microsoft, and Amazon, and whoever else. But ultimately, all of these models still benefit whether or not you're using AI through one of the application layer products or you're using it directly through them. For them, it's win-win, right? I don't think that they are focused on, outmaneuvering the sort of the vertical, application layer companies that we talked about. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but I think that ultimately, like where their focus has to be as a company is not being vertically focused, but very much focused on having the best AI model, period. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's definitely where it's at. And it's an arms race. Chinese models are getting extremely, extremely good.
Yep.
Chemi 3 just dropped, and then we have Quen 3.8, and it's just going to keep going and going and going. But I need to ask you a couple of questions that I ask all of my guests. And one is like, obviously, you got a lot going on. You got, your Substack, which we'll get that later. Also,
www.legallydisrupted.com.
there you go. Your podcast, you got all the talks. You're a traveling man, as you admitted
Yep.
earlier. How do you keep a work-life balance? Is there such a thing, or you just never work a day in your life if you do what you love?
So there's a part of like the do what you love. I'm also like an extreme creature of routine, right? Like I just do the same things every day. When I wake up, I kind of wake up around the same time. I generally go to sleep at the same time. I'm like very careful about getting proper sleep because I think it informs the rest of my day. That's why I was so bad in Big Law. I couldn't like stay up until like all hours of the night and still really kind of function the next day. But I think work life balance. No, I don't have a work life balance. However, when I'm at work, I'm at work. And when I'm with my family, I'm with my family. There's like zero multitasking. I know like remote work has been very popular over the last few years. I'm a big, big proponent of in the office. Now, I don't love commuting, so I have an office that's very close. I walk 20 minutes to my office, but that's where the work goes. And if I have to make a call or write an I want to do it here. When I'm here, I'm fully in. I'm all in, and I work a lot of late nights. But if I'm reading Harry Potter to my 8-year-old, I'm entirely in that. I don't want to be even reminded of work at home. So I think that's my biggest advice, to anyone is like balance is almost impossible. But I think that if you can be fully present in whatever you are doing at that moment, that's a much better existence. But yeah, like I like what I do. I've created something that feels like, I don't ever feel really like I need to go on vacation because I kind of like what it is I do, like what it is I do. But then again, I also like I fly way too much as part of work, so maybe that's why I don't like to go flying around the world for family trips.
Well, I think those are great words of wisdom. And it directly like relates to the last one, which is what makes it worthwhile for you doing all this stuff.
First of all, I'm a people person, right? I prioritize people over companies, and I think this is why I'm good at sales, and this is why I'm good at advisory work. Is that I understand that whenever you are working with a company, that eventually that company is made up of a lot of people, and I try to make the people that I'm working with at a company succeed. That's really like what gets me, that's what gets me excited. And I also think it's cool to wake up every day and feel like, hey, like I'm at like the cutting edge of like what the industry is doing. Like I am like a change agent. I'm out in the frontier. I'm kind of like turning around everyone else and saying, hey, come out and join me here on the frontier, and I'll help you. I'll help you get there. So I think the work is exciting, but ultimately I think that like for me it comes down to the people.
Well, that's a really hopeful note because even in the age of tech and big AI, that people are still the focus, and
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful, Zach. I take from this that it sounds to me like you don't do anything halfway. Like you know, when you do something, you do it. And
Fair.
I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
And for everyone who has been listening or watching, how can they keep in touch with you?
So best way, I'm at Zach Abramowitz, ZACHABRAMOWITZ on X. My Substack, www.legallydisrupted.com, and my YouTube channel, Zach Abramowitz, is Legally Disrupted. And I recommend subscribing to all of those. And if you're going to do just one, get the Substack, because then you'll get little pieces of all the others.
Fantastic. And I highly recommend to all of you to follow Zach. You know, look behind him, killer whale, orca. Just type that in. You'll find him. Yeah, it was fantastic having you on. And I can't wait to get to see you again in person.
Looking forward to it, Tom.
And to all of you, thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.